Hello, Charleston, and welcome to this week's edition of Navigate Your Wealth, brought to you by the team of Compass Financial, based right here in Charleston. I'm your host, Kristen Oakley, and joining me in the studio, we have the CEO, Stawicki, and President Samantha Irish. We're going to be talking about one of the most important but most overlooked parts of planning for your retirement, of navigating your wealth. And that is, of course, estate planning. So stay with us. Karen and Sam, I'm excited for you to unpack all of this for our viewers today. How are you this week?
We are good. Thank you so much.
Good. Well, always lovely to see you. And I have to admit that when we think of estate planning, I think a lot of folks, it's not always the most fun thing to think about or the fun thing to talk about, but it is so critical. It is so necessary. And so I'm excited for you to shed a different perspective, a different light on this, so that we can help all of you watching at home navigate this important piece of your retirement planning successfully. I know that in my work as a financial educator, I've traveled nationwide, and a lot of folks have a huge misconception about estate planning. At the top of that list being that they think estate plans are only for the wealthy, but you believe, and I do as well, that every single person should have an estate plan. Why is that?
Yes. Absolutely, because you've worked hard for everything that you've accumulated, and I hope that you love your family. And when you're gone without a proper estate plan, you have left a virtual mess. And the reason it's a mess is because the only way you can get your assets transferred to those that you love is to have you sign the document transferring that over. And last time I checked, it's really hard to get a dead person to sign that piece of paper.
Yes.
Okay. So that is a really rotten situation to be in. And the other problem is, without a proper estate plan, you're virtually leaving the decision of who's going to get what to the courts. So why wouldn't you want to? I know it's a morbid conversation. Nobody wants to talk about mortality. Nobody wants to talk about dying. Sometimes they can't decide who they're going to give it to. But the good news is all of these plans can be updated and changed. You know, I have a story years ago. I was at a function and a woman asked me, "Honey, what do you do?" And first thing that came to my mind is, well, one of the most fun things I do is put the IRS to the back of the receiving line and bring the families to the front of the receiving line. She jumped out of her chair, grabbed me by the hand, pulled me to the other room where her husband was having a conversation with two other couples and said, Eric, you have to listen to what Karen just said. Tell him what you just said. Tell him what you just said. So I repeated what I said. And he reached into his wallet, pulled out a business card and said, "Please call me." Well, as it turns out, his mom and dad had both died in the year before, actually 2 years before. They died 3 weeks apart from one another, which was really sad. But what was even sadder is that they had not done a proper estate plan. So in that, you know, you lose the first one and then you lose the second one. They spent 2 years in probate and trying to untangle,
right?
That's the word I'm looking for. Untangle the mess. And so the first thing that this couple said is, you have to help us put this in proper order because we don't want this to happen to our children.
Absolutely. You know, and I hear that a lot. I think a lot of times folks don't think about it until they've had to deal with a mess that's been left in their lap. Then all of a sudden they're motivated to handle it. But God forbid, a tragedy can happen at any point along the way. This is not just something for people who are older. This is for every single person who's living and breathing. And yet so many people avoid it. You know, we already talked about it's because it's not always the most fun thing to think about. But what are some of the other reasons that you find folks just haven't engaged in the proper estate planning process?
You know, a lot of people come to us, and when we are talking with them about if they have an estate plan, they say, you know, we just haven't been able to decide, you know, who will be the guardian of our children. So it just feels really complicated. I know that that sounds silly, but that is a huge roadblock for so many individuals. Attorneys that we work with will say, you know, when they first proposed the, trust, the client couldn't decide. 18 years later, the client said, okay, I'm ready to build my trust. And the attorney says, what changed? Well, the kids are 18 now, so it doesn't really matter. Look, don't let that be the thing that stops you. As Mom said, when designed properly, you can update it and change a trust so that you are constantly in control. Now, a second reason that a lot of people don't do a trust is because of the cost. A lot of attorneys that build trusts and build estate plans are spending a lot of time and energy, and they want to be compensated for that, and we think that they should be.
Right.
But there are some basic elements that don't necessarily need an in-depth review, and we can do it at a lower cost.
You know, years ago, I used to hold seminars on estate planning, and this was back in California, and I had a law firm that worked with us, and for a single person, they would charge $800 for the trust, and for a married couple, they'd charge $1,000, and so clients were doing it. That was a reasonable amount of money. Now, really, you know, 20 years forward, you know, that's pretty cheap. But here's the thing, you can't get a trust today in Charleston for under $3,000, $4,000, $5,000.
Wow.
And what I've found is the more assets they have, the more the law firm or attorney feels like they have to charge. And I have a real problem with that. And because it is such an issue, and because we are so passionate that every single person, no matter what your age or economic status, should have an estate plan, that we went out and we sought a partnership with a company called Legacy Lock. And we can now offer to our clients a complete trust package through Legacy Lock. Included in that package are so many things, but the price is $1,495. So that's a lot less than the $3,000 and $5,000.
Yes.
But we have a special for you folks. If you call in today, if you could put that special up, if you call in today, we're going to offer you a $500 discount for calling and getting your name on our list. We will meet with you, we'll talk you through it, and if a trust is in, you know, the right thing for you to do, and I'm guessing it would be, your price is $995. So for under $1,000, we're going to give you the opportunity to have the whole package.
I love that you are offering this, because I think right there that eliminates a lot of the obstacles of the overwhelm. Who do I talk to? How do I know it's going to be, you know, and I can trust who I'm working with? This can all get done in one fell swoop, and I love that you've partnered and offered this amazing discount. What a blessing.
It truly is, and I think that that's because for us, we're so passionate. It would be almost wrong if we said you have to have it, but now there's a roadblock to it.
Right.
We're saying you need to have it, and we want to make sure that it is accessible. Listen, if you want to be in control, if you want to make sure that you know exactly where your assets are going, we want to give you this offer. We're going to dig in and tell you exactly what is included in that, but don't wait. Pick up the phone now and call to get your complimentary retirement roadmap, which, when we meet with you, we can also include your Legacy Lock plan.
Sam, Karen, thank you so much. I know we have a lot more important things to get into with this conversation, but what a way to kick off today's show. Again, don't wait. We encourage you. Karen and Sam are really busy, and there's limited amount of availability on their calendar, so don't wait. Pick up the phone, call this number, 855-348-3073, to schedule your time to meet with them to receive not only your complimentary retirement roadmap, but if you need help getting your estate affairs in order, you can take advantage of that amazing discount as well. If you'd rather not talk to someone right now, but you do have your smartphone handy, don't worry, we've got you covered there too. Simply pull it out. If you open up that camera app, you can point, click, and scan that QR code that you see there down in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. That will take you over to a landing page, ask you a few short, simple questions, and then a member of the team from Compass Financial will reach out to connect with you to schedule your complimentary visit that way as well. We have a lot more to get into regarding this important conversation of estate planning. Stay with us.
The work never seems to end until the day it finally does. After nearly a lifetime on the job, you should be rewarded for all the time you spent working. Whether that's crossing off items on your bucket list, learning a new passion, or rekindling the love of an old one. After all, life isn't over when you stop working. It's the start of an all-new chapter, the one where you're the writer and you get to choose how your story will go. A way to achieve that is by having a clear financial plan to sustain your golden years. The biggest fear most retirees have is if they'll have enough money to maintain the lifestyle they've always enjoyed. Having a plan to help protect you against the curveballs life often throws will help to maintain your lifestyle. Call today to get your free written financial plan so you may live every day to the fullest and enjoy the retirement of your dreams.
Welcome back, Charleston. You're watching Navigate Your Wealth, brought to you by the team of Compass Financial. I'm your host, Kristen Oakley, here with both Karen and Sam, the dynamic mother-daughter duo who really has such a passion to making sure all of your financial affairs are in order. And that's why we've dedicated today's entire show to the important conversation of estate planning. And before the break, you all generously offered this amazing deal that you've partnered with Legacy Lock, and you're able to offer a significant discount to you, the viewer, if you need help getting your estate plan in order. So I'd love for you to talk through what all's included with that Legacy Lock estate plan.
Absolutely. You know, one of the biggest reasons, other than can't decide who's going to be the guardian or the cost being the barrier, that people don't do an estate plan is because it's confusing. It's very complex. So what I want to do is not only talk about what's included in the Legacy Lock plan, but what each piece is.
Yes.
So the very first thing is a will. Now, people say, oh, I have a will, so I don't need anything else. And I need you to understand that a will is simply a map. If you want to go from here to Boston, I know today you use your GPS, but in the old days, we opened up a map. So the map only showed you what highways you needed to take to be able to get to Boston, but it wasn't the vehicle that got you there. The will is the exact same thing. In your will, you will stipulate exactly who you want to get which assets or which pieces of jewelry or all of your other possessions. But with a will, the only way you get those assets transferred to your loved ones is through probate. That's right. With a will, you are designated to go to probate. And the reason is what I stated in the beginning of the show. The only way we can get that asset transferred from your name into theirs is with your signature. And it's really hard to get the deceased to pick up the pen and sign that document. So probate does it on your behalf. So that's what the will does. That's the first piece. The second piece is power of attorney. You must have a power of attorney for both health care and for financial decisions. So imagine you're in an accident and you're knocked unconscious and you're in a coma. You're not dead, but you also cannot sign that document. The person that you designate as your power of attorney for financial decisions or healthcare decisions will be the one that is designated to be able to make those decisions for you. Now, something else I want to point out, if you are 18 years of age or older, if you have children or grandchildren who are 18 years of age or older, that power of attorney needs to be done for them as well. When Samantha and her brother Scott were 18 years of age and older, we had the power of attorney taken care of and signed, and I had them keep one copy in the glove compartment and the other copy I had. Because if they go into a hospital, I may be their parent, I may be the one that's paying the bill, but I no longer have control to make those decisions for them. I didn't know that until, you know, a decade ago. So that's important. So that power of attorney is very, very important. And then, of course, the healthcare directive is the end-of-life decisions.
Yes.
You know, you could have had lunch discussion with your loved one and said, listen, honey, if anything happens to me, make sure you pull the plug. But when you walk out of that restaurant, if you are hit by the bus, you're not dead, but you're in a coma or you're hooked up to life support. Doesn't matter what you and he had the conversation about. Unless it's in writing, unless it's documented, you will stay hooked up to that hospital forever. And that is just putting money. Now, you may want to stay hooked up. You may not want to have them pull the plug, but you don't have the option unless it's in writing. So the Legacy Lock package will include all of those pieces and we'll walk you through every single one and help you designate who the right people are to help make those decisions. If you're married, it's likely that your spouse is that first person. But besides that, we want to list a contingent, because if you and your spouse are in that accident together, it's so critical that you have that other person named.
Sure. Well, and I think to your point, it's complicated. It can be very overwhelming, and that's why this is such an attractive, opportunity for folks to have it all done for them in one fell swoop. I don't think folks understand often why probate can be so problematic. So I just want to touch on that, because not only is it very expensive, It's very time consuming. It could take months, years in most cases, right, for all that to go through. But it's also a matter of public record. So think about this. Say you're no longer here, but do you want your nosy neighbor, your nosy brother-in-law, sister-in-law being able to go down to the courthouse? Any Joe Blow can go down there, pull up a copy of your will, see what you had, who gets what. It just gets very messy very quickly when the proper planning's not done.
Absolutely. Well, we have a client, this is actually a perfect segue, Kristen. We have a client whose father said, I do not want either of my two daughters to have any issues when I go. And so I am going to make sure that everything is taken care of. And unfortunately, there were a few assets that he didn't realize were not properly taken care of. He had a will, but as Mom said, that's just the roadmap.
Right.
It doesn't actually execute how it's going to happen. And so in his case, for his two daughters, they ended up having their assets go to probate. So now they're mourning the loss of their father.
Right.
They're trying to deal with how we're going to get this out of probate, how we're going to allocate the assets. There's just two of them. They knew exactly what needed to happen.
Right.
This was so ridiculous, but that is the law. There wasn't a trust in place to be able to execute his wishes. So instead, it took 2.5 years.
Wow.
It took a lot of money, and one of the daughters was in the Northeast where he was, and so she was essentially the one that was responsible for it. Meanwhile, the other daughter was in Charleston. She was our client, and there was nothing she could do from far away. So all of the burden was now put on her sister. So she's trying to help remotely. I mean, that is not what his wish was.
Right.
That is not what your wish is either. If you have a desire to transfer your assets, whether it's to your family, whether it's to charity, whether it's to organizations, to the community, it doesn't matter where you want it to go. That's your wish. But don't you want to make sure that it gets there in the easiest, most streamlined ability?
Absolutely. Sam and Karen, thank you so much. And you know, we said at the top of the show, we know that this isn't always the most fun thing to think about. But I would challenge you to recognize that this is by far one of the most loving things that you can ever do for those that you leave behind. Because as Sam's story just illustrated, when you're grieving, that is not the time on top of everything else that you want to wade through a nightmare and a mess that's been left in your lap. And so often this happens unintentionally and it can be avoided. So don't wait. The time is now. If you've been having that nagging feeling, you've been putting this off. I know so many people have it on their to-do list. Oh, someday I'm going to take care of this. The time is now. We encourage you, pick up the phone and call 855-348-3073. Again, this is for no cost, no charge, no obligation to have the conversation with Karen and Sam. It's simply an invitation to speak with them, see what you need. If you do need that estate planning package, again, they have this wonderful deal with Legacy Lock. It's going to give you $500 off for under $1,000. You can have all of this buttoned up, and you can have the peace of mind of knowing that your affairs are in order. More on Navigate Your Wealth right after this.
When was the last time you saw your financial professional? Are you getting the most out of the strategy that was created for you? Although you've done a great job finding someone to help plan for your future, are you 100% sure that you were given the right strategy? We can help answer these questions and more with a complimentary second opinion evaluation. We will take a look at what you have in place and then help determine if you're well positioned to get the most out of your future retirement income. In the event that it is not, we can help by making suggestions and showing you how to get on the right path. You wouldn't get just one opinion when it comes to a major health decision, so why would you treat your most important financial decision with such disregard? Call today for your no-cost, no-obligation second opinion evaluation to see if you're getting the most out of your retirement income plan.
Welcome back to Navigate Your Wealth. I'm your host, Kristen Oakley, here with both Karen and Sam from Compass Financial, based right here in Charleston. We are having a really heartfelt conversation today about all things estate planning because we want to make sure that your affairs are in order. I want to circle back to that client story that you shared. Of course, the client was the daughter who was dealing, unfortunately, with a mess from her deceased father that he unintentionally left behind. Let's talk a little bit more in depth why probate is so problematic.
It's expensive. Here's the thing. If you own a home, and let's just say it's a $750,000 home, and you only have $100,000 in it, so you have a $650,000 mortgage, the probate is based on the full value of the home. They don't care that you really only own $100,000 of it. So the probate fee is based on the entire $750,000. So that's number one problem. The other problem with not having the estate plan is just the control from the grave, right? When you have everything in a trust and you say exactly how you want it to go, maybe in this particular situation, he wanted one daughter to have more than the other daughter, they can contest wills. With a trust, they can't contest it. There's provisions that you can put in it so that they can't contest it. So it just gives you a lot more control for what you want to see happen. Yeah,
and this is so important because a lot of families maybe are dealing with an adult child with disabilities who's going to need a certain kind of care. Maybe you have, unfortunately, we see this too, folks have a child who's a spendthrift or who's dealing with an addiction. You can have that control within the trust to make sure everyone's taken care of in the right way that meets their needs.
Well, and more to that point, when we first did our trust, Samantha and Scott were 9 and 11 years old. And so, I mean, we had, you know, estate, we had insurance, we had everything. And so we set up our trust, and this is the beautiful thing about the control piece. We set up the trust so that should we die earlier than we were hoping, that the trust would get split into two pieces, half for Samantha, half for Scott. And the payout provisions were that at 25 years old or upon graduation from college, each one would get 25% of their half. At 35, they would get 50% of their half, and at 40, they would get the balance. Now you say, well, why would you do that? My experience has been that inheritances of any value are more money than that person had the day before. And typically within 18 months, that money is gone. So by structuring it out that they have to graduate from college or hit 25 and then 35 and then 40, it was kind of 3 strikes, you're out. Now the good news is my husband and I are still here, and they both passed those first 2 mile markers. But the point is that we can write all those provisions into the trust to give you that control of how you may want to disperse those assets to your family.
And it really is about having that control that's so important. Again, this is your money, your assets, your wishes. We want them to be carried out the way you want them to be. One of the things we would also be remiss if we didn't get into today, and it's something that I'm so passionate about, I know you are as well, is making sure your beneficiary designations are up to date. First, explain what those are, and then we're going to go into some details about why it's so critical, right?
So when it comes to beneficiary designation, typically there is the primary beneficiary, and then there's contingent or secondary beneficiaries. These are operation of law. So this is where the law is able to pass the asset to exactly who you want.
And let me just clarify, what types of assets are we talking about? Where do folks typically have these beneficiary designations?
So on life insurance, there's beneficiaries. You can put beneficiaries on your accounts at the bank. You can put it on your
IRAs,
your IRAs,
401ks, right?
Perfect, your 401ks. Any place that you can put a beneficiary designation, you're going to want to include one. Other operation of law is transfer on death. So if you have your name and transfer on death to someone, so if in my case it was the account is in my name and then transfer on death would be to my husband, Jared Irish.
Well, no, go ahead. You say so. Joint account also does that. So what we were bringing up is the ways to avoid probate. Operation of law. There's 3. There's joint tenancy. So if it's joint name, one goes to the other. There's beneficiaries, or there's the transfer on death. Okay. But the other thing with beneficiaries is, and that's the big question about per stirpes and per capita.
Yes.
So a lot of people don't understand this. If I list my beneficiaries as Samantha and Scott, my 2 children, I can either list it as per capita or per stirpes. And the difference is per capita means if something happens to Samantha, everything goes to her brother Scott. But if I say per stirpes, then if something happens to Samantha, it goes down her line of beneficiaries or her family line, her husband, her children, what have you, and Scott would still have his half. Right. So there's, all these little intricacies that you have to know about, but they are the pieces that, we want to help.
For sure.
And people understand.
Per stirpes is Latin for of issue, and in our family, so unfortunately my husband's brother passed away when he was 36, and he had twin boys who were 7. Well, fast forward, I didn't join the family till a good, 13 years later, and when I was first educating my in-laws about this, they didn't realize that they had inadvertently left their 2 grandsons out of the will until I came into the picture and said, you gotta update these beneficiary designations. And what a lot of people don't realize is whoever's name is listed on the beneficiary designation always trumps what the will says. That's another big misconception people don't realize. They think, oh, I've had a will, I'm fine. Well, guess what? If that name hasn't been updated on the beneficiary designations, they could inadvertently be left out of everything.
Well, and that's so important that you bring that up, Kristen, for a couple of reasons. First of all, if you haven't checked who your beneficiaries are on your bank accounts or some of your other assets in a year, I'm telling you, there should be an annual thing. Like, checking the battery in the sprinkler system, smoke detector. Okay.
Yeah.
You should also be checking your beneficiaries, because here's a story of a client. She was, the wife was my client. Her husband, for whatever reason, it was a second marriage, was not. And we'd done all this work with the wife, and I said to the husband, would you like me to just review things, go over anything, kind of give it a, second opinion, look over? No. It's all good, I'm fine, is what he said. Well, he passed away, and what we found out was that one of his old IRAs, he had the first wife as beneficiary. Now, the good news was it was a very small amount, and she was gracious enough to sign it over to the wife, but she didn't have to.
No, she wasn't legally required to.
No, and he said, no, I'm fine. So really checking those beneficiaries is important.
Absolutely. One more time, I know you want to share the special offer that we have today.
Listen, we know that creating a trust could be a burden, and we want to give you the opportunity to build your trust package with Legacy Lock for a $500 discount. For less than $1,000, we want you to have the opportunity to put all of your affairs in order so that you get to remain in control. You've worked really hard for your dollars. Let's make sure that they go exactly where you want them. This is the most loving thing that you can do for your family, for your community, and for yourself. Take action today.
Sam and Karen, thank you so much. We love you, Charleston. We look forward to being back with you next time on Navigate Your Wealth.